Seller concessions. It's a term that maybe you've heard of, but don't quite understand. Well, in this week's video, I'm going to talk to you about what they are, when to ask for them, and what those concessions can be used for. So if you're about to buy a house and you need some seller concessions, then this is the video for you. So stick around. Hey everyone, my name is Danae Hewitt and I am your go-to DFW Realtor with Brico Realty Services. I help people buy and sell real estate here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And if you haven't done so already, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Instagram. I hang out there pretty much on a daily basis, giving you more real estate content. All right, enough about me. Let's talk about seller concessions. If you don't know this already, when you go to purchase a house, it costs a lot of money. There are a lot of fees associated with buying a house, and I cover a lot of them in this video right here, so definitely check that out after this video. But as a buyer, you have your down payment that you need to pay for. You have closing costs, and closing costs can be things for title transfer fees, recording fees, lender origination fees, appraisal fees. There's a lot of fees. And also during the closing process, the buyer has to pay for a home inspection on the house and probably a termite inspection on the house too, because I always recommend those. And for all of this stuff, the buyer has to actually have the cash in their account to pay for this. You can't put any of this on a credit card. Now, and I say that with one little caveat. Technically, the home inspection and termite inspection can be put on a credit card, but when you are under contract on a home, you don't want to accrue more debt because your lender is going to be looking at your credit score, double checking your credit card balances, and making sure that your debt to income ratio doesn't get any worse so that you can actually qualify for the loan. So my recommendation is not to put anything on credit, but of course, talk to your lender. But really overall, everything that I just mentioned, that all needs to be cash that you have to put towards your home. And that can be a lot of money, of course, depending on the price of the home and how much you want to put down. So what we have is something called seller concessions, where the seller will give the buyer some money at the closing table that will go towards their closing cost. These concessions cannot go towards the buyer's down payment on the home. These concessions cannot go towards any inspections that are done on the home. They really can only go towards the buyer's closing costs that are accrued with their loan, that are accrued with the title company, and they can also be used to help the buyer buy down their interest rate. That's a possibility. But again, it can't be used as assistance with their down payment or paying for any of the inspections, because actually those home inspections are paid for outside of the closing table. They're done right after that offer is accepted. So these closing costs that the seller will give the buyer help to reduce the amount of money that the buyer is bringing to the closing table when they purchase the house. So how does a seller give the concessions? They're not like literally writing them a check and handing it to them at the closing table. A lot of times the seller is going to know what they are going to net when they sell their home minus their closing costs. And this would just be money that is reduced from that net. So let's say that the seller is estimated to net $100,000 when they sell this house, but the buyer has negotiated $5,000 in seller concessions. Well, $100,000 minus that $5,000 is $95 that now the seller will net when they sell their house. When do we ask for seller concessions? You're gonna find that really in two different situations. The first situation is right up front. In our contracts, there is a paragraph that states that the seller will contribute X number of dollars towards the buyer's closing cost. And that is upfront and a part of the offer. So the seller is aware that, hey, this is what the offer price is, but I need to minus X number of dollars because they need me to give that to them in order to close on this house. That's the first time that it can be asked for in a transaction. The second time is after home inspections are done on the house. So let's say we are under contract on a house, no seller concessions have been asked for at this point. So let's find out the home buyer does an inspection on the home, and that inspection report shows us that that water heater is on its last limb. It needs to be replaced soon. So a couple things you can do here. You can ask the seller to replace that at their cost prior to closing, and then of course provide us receipts letting us know that it has been replaced. Or we can ask for seller concessions that would cover the cost to purchase the water heater and the labor to get it installed. And I like to do this and ask for concessions when it comes to homeowner repairs because it takes it off of the seller's hands and the buyer can't come back to them and say this was done improperly and that it causes a whole nother mess. So what I like to say is that if some repairs do need to be done, that we just ask for concessions at closing, and the buyer will put that towards replacing the water heater or repairing anything else that needed to be done. That was negotiated. Asking for concessions when it comes to repairs being done to the house just makes things a whole lot easier. It's black or white. Money is exchanging hands for the cost of these repairs. Let's talk about seller concessions in a buyer's market and a seller's market. We were certainly in a wild, very intense, and a very fast-paced seller's market during the pandemic. And it was very difficult to get an offer accepted with seller concessions up front. Because think about it this way, if a home has 30 offers on it, you can pretty much guarantee that there are offers out there that did not ask for seller concessions to help pay for the buyer's closing cost. Because from a seller's point of view, why would I accept this offer, which is going to net me less money versus this offer, which is not? The listings that I had during the pandemic, my clients definitely did receive some offers that needed seller concessions, and unfortunately, none of those offers were accepted. I also had buyers that were looking to purchase a home during the pandemic. They needed concessions, and those offers were not accepted simply because there was so much competition out there. And a lot of the times the seller is going to accept an offer that is going to net them the most money. That's with the seller's market when that initial offer was negotiated up front. Well, what happens in a seller's market when you have repairs that need to be done? Can you still ask for concessions? Well, yes, that actually did happen. There were homes that sold that did offer seller concessions, but most likely those concessions were given to the buyer as a result of something that came up on the home inspection. It's certainly the seller's prerogative to say, no, I'm not going to give you any money to repair anything in this house. Go fly a kite. I'm going to go back to these 30 offers that I received initially. Absolutely. But there definitely were sellers that said, hey, you know what? I know that hot water heater does need to be replaced. So sure, I'll give you the seller concessions for it. Definitely concessions did happen. I'm sure seller concessions were accepted in our seller's market the last couple of years, but it was probably pretty rare. Let's talk about concessions in a buyer's market. Right now in DFW, we are not in that wild, crazy seller's market anymore. Things have definitely leveled out a little bit. It makes the market a little bit more fair for the buyers. I have actually seen some buyers be successful asking for concessions up front with an offer. I have also seen some sellers, I just showed a house yesterday where the seller had put it out there that they were upfront offering seller concessions to help repaint a couple of rooms in the house that I don't know what happened with that paint. It didn't look good. And so instead of them repainting it, they were going to give the buyer some money towards repainting it on their own or hiring somebody. So I have seen a little bit more of that, not to say we are in a buyer's market right now, but we're definitely moving towards a market where the buyer can ask for more things and might get those things accepted. Just last month, I helped some buyers purchase a property here. We didn't ask for the concessions up front, but after further inspections of the home, we asked for seller concessions to help replace part of the fence. The fence was not in great shape on all three sides, and it was rotten, and it certainly needed to be replaced. We didn't get the full amount of what it would cost to replace the fence, but we did get some money that we negotiated after our home inspections. So it definitely can happen. Every situation is different. It certainly just depends on the sellers and what their situation is in regards to selling the house. It depends on how much money, of course. I mean, maybe that seller doesn't have this extra money to give to the buyer because maybe they're purchasing their next house and they need to net as much money as possible for the down payment and closing costs on their next house. You just never know. So concessions can be a little tricky to get negotiated and accepted in a contract. So that's why it's really important that as a buyer and as a seller in any market that you are aware of what they are, why they're asked for, and what they can be used for. All right, that covers it for this week's video. I hope you guys got a ton of value out of it. So if you have, leave me a comment below and let me know if you've had any seller concessions accepted in this market or any market. All right, I will see you next week.